And welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. We are welcoming Carolyn Jennings and Avi Joseph from the Stark County Health Department. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this time of year, I'm guessing you're kind of busy, yes?
Yes, we are.
Yes, indeed.
What do we have what's going around? I think I'm going to just throw that right out there. We hear about people coming down with the flu. There's a lot of discussion whether it's smart to get the flu shot or not get the flu shot. Some say that the flu shot is better for last year's flu than this year's flu. Help us understand where do we find the nuggets of truth in all those statements?
So I can go ahead and speak to that. I know there's been some concern about the flu vaccine this year. I think they had done a study in Australia because their flu season is the opposite of ours. It started in May. And they found that vaccine effectiveness was only about 10% but it was specifically for one subtype of the influenza A virus. And with the flu virus especially, it changes so much over year to year, from region to region. There's really no way that we could know whether that same effectiveness would apply to the U.S., to our current season. So vaccine effectiveness is something that we can really only know after the season is over, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But until then, the flu vaccine is really the best public health intervention that we have to prevent.
So it's better to get it than to not get it, right?
Yes.
To get the vaccine rather than not get the vaccine.
Definitely. Yes.
I always hear senior citizens and babies are the most vulnerable to catching it. What do you recommend as far as age group of who can get it and who cannot get it?
Okay, we recommend the flu shot for infants beginning at 6 months of age. And if it is the first flu shot that they are receiving, we recommend a dose at 6 months and then in 28 days, a second dose.
So you do it in 2 stages?
Yes. The first dose will more or less prime the immune system, and then the second dose in 28 days will actually start developing and protecting the immune system against the flu.
What about on the other end of the scale, elderly people? Is there an age when you should stop getting the flu shot?
No, there isn't. We recommend the flu shot to all of the elderly.
Okay. How about if you've been sick? Should you get the flu shot?
Yes. So basically we just recommend it to, I think the CDC says, anybody over the age of 6 months who hasn't gotten it this season. I think that, there are a couple of medical exceptions, but it's pretty rare. So, yeah. Tease
everybody's mind. Can the flu shot give you the flu?
No.
No.
Okay. Do you hear that? Do you hear people say,
all the time,
I never get the flu until I got a flu shot?
Right. The vaccine is not a live virus, so therefore cannot give you the flu.
Okay, what is the vaccine then? What are we putting in ourselves?
So this vaccine specifically, there are 4 different, or I guess depending. So there's one that's the trivalent vaccine. So there are 3 different viruses. One is an influenza A, which is the H3N2 subtype. One is the H1N1 subtype, which, if you remember from 2009, there was the big swine flu. So
yes, I do.
Yeah, so that virus is based on the virus from that pandemic in 2009. And then there are 2 influenza B viruses that are put into this as well. And the way they select those viruses are kind of based on what viruses are circulating during the current year. And which viruses they think will be circulating during the next flu season.
What about bird flu? Remember that one was another one a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Is that something people are concerned about still?
So you always kind of look for what we call like novel influenza types,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of those will come from animals, whether that be birds or swine
mm-hmm.
or whatever. So one of the reasons during flu surveillance, when you see someone who's picked up a novel influenza A type, they'll usually ask if, if they have any contact with animals, that type of thing, and see if they can characterize it as, an avian flu type or a swine flu type or whatever that may be.
Are people who work with animals more likely to catch these types of viruses and pass them along?
Yeah, so people who come into especially direct contact with swine
Yes.
are the ones who are more likely to pick up these new variants. And I guess that would probably be the case in avian flu as well.
How do we prevent flu? And before we even get to that, there are a number of people who say the flu just seems to be a catch-all now for I'm sick today. Oh, I caught the flu. But it may or may not actually be influenza. They might just ache and feel lousy. How do you know if you've got the flu, and how do you prevent getting the flu?
Well, you can be tested through a nasal swab, and they know relatively quickly if you're positive or negative for the flu, and again, what type of influenza. And then as far as preventing it, stay home when you don't feel well, good hand washing.
All right, let's pause there a moment, because the staying home when you don't feel well, we live in a day and age where people feel driven to soldier on, take whatever, take the day medicine and the night medicine and just keep pushing and plugging along. But you're saying if you're sick, stay home and keep your germs to yourself, right?
Exactly.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, how do you explain that to a boss who's saying, where are you and why aren't you here?
Well, you can let them know that they'll be damaging the productivity of everybody if everybody gets sick.
Oh, what a good point. The whole company would have to shut down if everybody gets sick, yes?
Yeah.
Hand washing. Okay, that's, is there a proper way to wash our hands?
Well, they're saying to wash your hands, scrub for at least 20 seconds. And we always tell the children to say the ABC song twice, and then you have washed your hands properly and for the correct amount of time.
Oh, that's very good.
But we stress to wet your hands, lather, scrub, rinse, and dry.
What's your feeling on the antibacterial, goop that you can, or foam or something that you can put on your hands? So that's good or bad, or the jury's still out on that?
So those are good generally, I would say. It's always helpful to, practice proper hand hygiene. There is a concern that, continuously using hand sanitizers may lead to further antimicrobial resistance. But in general, you do want to be keeping your hands clean. I think we probably recommend hand washing with soap and warm water over, just using a hand sanitizer. But both are good ways to
So it's always better to just do the warm water and soap washing of the hands rather than depending on hand sanitizer. But if you're there without soap and water, hand sanitizer is a good next bet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Baby wipes, having those around are kind of good to have. Yeah, maybe tucked into your glove compartment or something in the car. But something so that you can be cleaning your hands between. And how often? Anytime you touch a doorknob, anytime you shake hands with someone, how often do you recommend?
Yes.
Yeah, all of it.
Yes, all of it. And we also recommend that in the course of the day you keep your hands away from your mouth, away from your eyes, because if you have germs on your hands, you accidentally touch your eyes, you can end up with a conjunctivitis or pink eye. So keep your hands away from your face, your eyes, your mouth.
Okay, we're a friendly group here, and you're talking to. I'm sure somebody listening says, "Wait a minute, I'm a church greeter. How am I supposed to not shake hands with people? Wait, I'm in sales. How do I not shake people's hands? Do we have a season of the year where we just all agree, let's just not shake hands?" What do you recommend?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's realistic to keep everybody from,
Right.
human contact.
Yes,
At
exactly.
all times, but yeah, I mean, as long as you're regularly washing your hands throughout the day, especially, if they're dirty or if you've come into contact with something that, like food or something. Yeah, so as long as you're regularly washing your hands,
And before you eat, obviously.
obviously,
Yes.
yes.
Let's talk about toys. How in the world do we keep toys clean from one child to the next child? I'm thinking particularly if a child goes to daycare, but even in a person's home. How do you keep the toys clean enough for the kids to play with?
Cleanse them with soap and water between children or between playtime. If a child is ill, don't share those toys with the other children.
And to add to that, that's actually something that we see a lot as kind of being a cause for outbreaks in daycare is these toys that these kids share. We'll just have whoever's germs from the last time, and obviously kids aren't practicing good hand hygiene, so yeah, we'll find that as kind of a causative element in some of these outbreaks.
I read recently the way to wash stuffed animals, because those are tricky, is to put them in a pillowcase and then just wash the pillowcase. Have you heard that? Am I on the wrong path there, or does that make sense? It
makes sense to me. I guess I don't do a lot of washing of stuffed animals personally, but yeah, I mean, I guess does that not ruin the stuffed
Well,
animal?
that's I guess in the
Yes.
pillowcase it doesn't ruin the matting as
okay.
well, but they do get clean.
And they
I-
should
Yeah.
get cleaned, yeah, as long as they're washable. That should
Yeah,
work.
that would make
But
sense.
smart to be washing the stuffed animals, right?
sure,
Those can be
sure.
just a hotbed of germs. You said something about bacteria not becoming resistant. Let's focus on that a little bit. So often we're being prescribed antibiotics, and I know that might be one of the problems that some bacteria become then they get tougher. And they start resisting the antibiotics that we're taking. How does that happen, and what do we do about it?
So I mean, it's actually pretty interesting. You're kind of watching evolution happen, on a microscopic scale. So you'll have an antibiotic introduced that is really effective against this bacteria, except for maybe, one or two bacteria that have something about them that allows them to survive. And then those bacteria will propagate and become, the more dominant bacteria subtype, and they end up, causing this infection that can't be cured by antibiotics. So we come up with a new antibiotic, and then, the bacteria develops a resistance to that. So
Man, it's just a never-ending little battle,
Yeah.
isn't it?
kind of.
Very scary to think of bacteria that cannot be killed with antibiotics that are just going to grow and grow. That's terrifying. How do we prevent that?
So I think one of the biggest things we can do is cut down on our use of antibiotics in general. Obviously there's a lot of reasons for this, but a lot of people think that antibiotics are a bit overprescribed in this country, just because, doctors kind of want to cover themselves, and make sure that they're treating empirically, so they're treating. If it could be a bacterial infection, they want to get rid of it. Another thing would be, antibiotic use in farm animals. That's actually one of the bigger ways that antibiotics get used in this country. So really reducing antibiotic use would, I think, go some way towards reducing antibiotic resistance as well.
Well, it seems to me that it would be easier to keep our germs at home so that we don't spread them, so that we're not overprescribing antibiotics, because we live in a time when we really all can pretty much do our job from home. When you think of technology has really taken us a long way. You can phone it in, seriously. Should we be doing more of that? Maybe just try, again, keeping your germs at home and not sharing them is a great idea, is it not?
It is a great idea, and depending on the facility, if you're able to do your job, at home. But I feel if you are ill, you should stay
Yeah.
at home with your germs until you're better.
Preach it, Carolyn. Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.